A study conducted by Twaweza Uganda has shown that the poverty levels among Ugandans are higher, more than doubled from 14% in 2017 to 29% in 2018. According to the report, 4 out of 5 Ugandan households, 81%, say that their household income does not meet their daily expenses.
Yes, and earlier figures released by the Uganda Bureau of Statistics put the total number of Ugandans who cannot afford, hear this, 3 meals a day are at 8 million, within the East African region now having the easiest, actually the highest poverty incidence. Now this morning we are asking why poverty has not been effectively tackled despite the numerous poverty eradication interventions by government. Of course, to give us some of these particular answers and just to have this particular conversation, we are joined by Dr. John Sekamate. He is a planning and development consultant right here in the country, and also Mr. Julius Atuhura. He is the regional coordinator research at Twaweza East Africa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Now, before we get into that conversation, we're going to be playing something from last week when this report was released and what the officials had to say about it.
Are annoying, to say the least. One, that despite colossal sums of money that has been invested in fighting poverty, like he points out, had reduced from 56% to 19.7%. But this year it shot up to 21.4%. What has gone wrong? We have become lazy because of the entitlement mentality.
So something has come up, the entitlement mentality. He also did mention that the reason as to why we're having these statistics is because there could be Ugandans are lazy. Is it that we're lazy, or is it that a majority cannot keep up with the inflation rate that now stands at 5%, and yet we're still having a conversation that we don't have a minimum wage? What exactly could it be? We can start with you.
Thank you. So I think to lump it up and say Ugandans are lazy would be to kind of forget the context in which Ugandans live and live their lives every day. So Ugandans, I would say, behave the way they are conditioned to behave. We live in an environment. So if circumstances are tough and Ugandans are trying their best, just think about that ordinary woman in your village. How is their daily life from morning to evening? Are they really lazy? They're up at 6. They're already digging. They're already struggling. They're having many initiatives they're making, but those initiatives don't bring as much as they would expect. So to call them lazy, I think, would be unreal.
What's for you, Doctor?
I would also think that calling Ugandans lazy would be very unfair. Here we have to look at the role of government and where people are. Government, I agree with my friend Mondo when he says that people should not feel that they are entitled, but government has a duty to provide leadership. Yes. Now, according to the second National Development Plan, which is being implemented, during this time, we committed to invest according to value chains. Now, we usually see, when you look at the statistics from UBOS, we say about nearly 80% of our labor force is employed in agriculture. But the right term to use is that 80% are trapped in agriculture. Because they're not employed there, but they are trapped, they can't make a reasonable living, and most of them are seriously underemployed. And why are they underemployed? Because we have not put sufficient investment to make those sectors, wherever they are, productive. But if we put some investment according to the value chains, pick any crop, be it maize, beans, or whatever, and you put sufficient investment along its value chain, then you will attract the private sector to invest, and then production and productivity will go up, and then these people will start getting meaningfully employed, and that way you will see that their livelihoods will change.
So, Doctor, what you're saying is that we have misplaced priorities, because even when we look at the upcoming financial budget for the financial year 2019-2020, I mean, agriculture is still not taking the big chunk of the budget pretty much. So, are you saying that that should have been the other way around? That we need to put our monies where our capacity and our pretty much, I think agriculture is what sets us apart, and our weather and climate supports that as well. So, are you saying that we need to relook at that?
Yeah, we need to relook at that, although the situation is a bit tricky in the sense that it's true, when we remember the president was emphasizing infrastructure, and that was very true, was very correct. At the beginning, we had a serious shortage of infrastructure, a serious deficit in terms of roads, in terms of power. But now, as we overcome this deficit, we have to look beyond. In fact, we don't have to wait to overcome the deficit in infrastructure before we start investing in other areas. Already in this time, we should have started investing seriously in agricultural production and raising productivity. The problem with the agriculture is that the bulk of it is in the hands of the private sector. So government has to think carefully, what are those strategic investment areas that can stimulate the private sector involvement, private sector interest. And that is why we emphasized the value chain stages. Okay. For example, if you just look at something like storage, something like transportation, things like processing, So what do we need to invest as government in those areas to attract investment?
And we talk about what government needs to do. One thing that has been highlighted with this report and the findings was that there was poverty. But the third most problem that they are facing right now is also unemployment. Yes, how do we link poverty and unemployment right now? Because if we say, as it stands, we have about from 2018 to 12%. Yes, in terms of unemployment. Those were the findings. So what exactly what should be done in terms of the unemployment bit? Because you said they're trapped. They're trying, but they're trapped. Then there's unemployment. Then there's unemployment.
So I think it's important for government to target properly. We're talking about mainly the youth, who are mostly unemployed. And we also have a challenge in the education system that most of these young people have received, a system that somehow makes agriculture appear as a periphery, right? Many of us have gone to school, but when we think about getting involved in agriculture, we're like, come on, I went to school, why should I be going into agriculture? But agriculture is bigger than just going to a garden and digging, right? But if government targets properly and brings programs that indeed involve the youth and are attractive to them, actually, what used to be attractive maybe in the 80s and 90s may not be attractive today. So I think the targeting is very important, and deliberately going out and looking for those people who are most affected by unemployment and directing the resources towards them is pretty important. Now, there's another aspect to this. Uganda is very well known for writing nice laws, preparing nice policy documents. I mean, we are now reviewing are we going into the third phase of the development plan? So when you read it, it reads perfect, right? You think this is really perfect. But go and live it. The living of this policy document and how it actually plays out in the real world, it leaves a lot to be desired. So Ugandans have become frustrated too by the fact that they see things that appear to be good for them, things that are designed to make them better off, but the reality of how those things play out excludes them.
Doctor, I need to bring you on this. And looking at the statistics, I mean, the poverty levels over doubling. In 2017, we were talking about 14% of, in terms of, poverty levels. And in 2018, I mean, that's just a difference of 1 year. 2018, we're talking about 29%. What could have changed in that short span of time that warrants this particular increment in terms of poverty levels?
Actually, when you look at it, when I saw this report, I was very happy. In research, my friend here would know, there is this concept we call triangulation. Now, when we look at the figures from UBOS, they give us what we call the quantitative assessment. They give us the what and how much. Now, if you look at, for example, the research being done by EPRC in Makerere, they tell us the policy angle of these figures. What does it mean for agriculture? What does it mean for this and so on? Now there is this quantitative aspect which in many cases has been lacking or missing, which to me is a very big and important contribution to the person, him or herself. What does it mean to the person?
Yes.
And that's what we are getting here. That these people whom we say are poor, do they feel they are poor? Is poverty really their biggest problem? So and now here, it is here in black and white, they're telling us it is poverty which is biting us. So I think this is it's not good that they are poor, but it is good that we are now hearing it and we are saying we need now to change the way we have been looking at this.
Doctor, there's one thing that you mentioned, and I'll bring Julius in on this one. When you mentioned the fact that, yes, there are things government maybe has not done and they need to change a few things, and you also mentioned the people that are subjected to this poverty, that are going through it, and maybe a few things that they are doing wrong. Are there a few things that they're doing wrong in terms of maybe giving birth to more children, or the perception that they have of, I'm okay, this is the most I can get out of my country, and people are not even, what they'd rather do is leave the country and go and work elsewhere without trying. So where do we put the Ugandan in putting efforts to fighting poverty?
That's a very, very important question. Because you see, again, we have to look at both sides of the equation. Government looks at the supply side, but there is the demand side, which is also equally important, if not more important. You are very right when you say that what does the ordinary Ugandan contribute to this problem? And one of the starting points is the family. Because the timing of our family formation, historically, we said this all the time, is, can be a problem. Because typically, if families start early, that means, of course, it's the women or the girls who bear the brunt of childbearing. Yeah. So if childbearing starts early, that means that woman or that girl will not have completed her education. And of course, if she doesn't complete education, forget about career development, forget about good living, and so on. So they are condemned from the beginning, from the very start. And then you have what we call generational poverty, because if she her children are living in poverty, they will also grow up as poor people, become poor parents, giving birth to poor children, and so on.
It's a cycle.
So the cycle continues. So we have to break those cycles. And I don't know whether you or our listeners, viewers, have heard about what the National Population Council is doing, about the roadmap towards harnessing the demographic dividend. The logic being that although population has been a burden to us, to this country for so long, we can actually turn this burden into an asset. Yeah. So if we at this material point, the arithmetic is right, that if we had a rapid decline in fertility, this burden which we are having will be turned into an asset, because all of a sudden we shall have this huge population entering into the productive area, to productive age bracket, and then we shall no longer have a dependency burden. So that will, in and of itself, will just shoot the per capita income,
through the roof.
Through the roof.
What do you have to say about that, Julius?
So I think the challenge to government and whoever is responsible for organizing how Ugandans carry out their lives and become productive is to make sure this chain, the intergenerational transmission of poverty, is broken. And he has given us one way to break it, which is from the side of we Ugandans. Can we on our own realize, okay, things are tough, let's reduce the number of children we're having, and then, as he said, we see all of a sudden we have more people in the working group, and then less dependency down. So that would be very important. But also government must be deliberate, right? You know, I was big enough when UPE was introduced. I didn't benefit from it. But part of the message behind that was that do not worry about the size of your family because education is taken care of. And Ugandans indeed did listen to that message and they have refused to realize that was 20-something years ago. Things have changed. But the conditions are harder for them. So it's important again for government to come out deliberately and say, yes, we have this big population, we are struggling because the means by which we are living as a country are not enough. They would be enough if we did not have a continuous burden. The growth rate, the fertility rate in Uganda is so high. We are like the most fertile country in the world. Now, that means this challenge does not go away every year. So even what we think would be an asset becomes now, I mean, some other people have actually said, you call it a dividend, but this actually might be a curse.
Right. You know, let's flip the coin and talk about our economy and there not being a minimum wage, you know, pretty much, and the government being very deliberate about getting in investors so we can, you know, come up with these industries and create massive employment for our youth. What ideally could be the solution? You can imagine 3 meals a day is a luxury to over 8 million of Ugandans. How can that narrative be changed, Doctor? We can start with you, then we go to Mr. Julius.
Well, again, we have to start with investment. Because, you see, when we talk about a minimum wage, legislating on a minimum wage per se will not change anything. It has no magic in and of itself.
Why do you say so?
Because if, for example, tomorrow they said, okay, the minimum wage is 200,000 shillings. When nobody is ready, or no money is available to pay that minimum wage, the minimum wage will end up just being academic. But if we invested properly in development, rather in production and productivity enhancement, you will see this production attracting more people. And the more workers we bring in, the more wealth is created. And so you'll find the economy itself, you know, growing organically and expanding. Now, the reason why you may need to legislate on a minimum wage thereafter is to weed out this, of course, the economy is not being run by angels. There's always an element of exploitation. You know, some people may want to take advantage of others, you know, especially those in vulnerable, you know, positions. So that's why we may need to legislate for a minimum wage. But to start with, by legislating on a minimum wage, then again we are getting our priorities wrong.
So how will we get to know that, you know what, now we are at that stage that we can start legislating on minimum wage? What's the, you know, pretty much the, how will I put it, the measurement bar for that?
Oh, well, you will see the sector, as I said, we have an investment strategy which we have laid out in the development plan. Now, if you see that working, if you see those wheels turning, then you'll see that, you know, the economy is now moving. Let me give you an example. We've been talking about oil for the last probably 5 or so years. And I don't know whether the oil has started flowing, but you know, you don't see any oil on the market. You don't feel the effects of oil and so on. So now to start legislating about oil, you know, may sound, you know, superfluous. But if it starts flowing, then you say, okay, now we don't want to be caught unawares. Let us put some laws in place.
Okay. Mr. Julius, already we have a majority of, especially them that are in the informal sector, the laborers. You know, we cover such stories. They cry foul saying that we're already being exploited. So what ideally could be the solution? Because they're the same people who can hardly afford, you know, 3 meals a day. I mean, they're in that bracket. So what could be the, you know, quick solution for that as we wait for our economy to go to that stage where Doctor is actually telling us about?
Yeah, so I agree with Dr. Sekamate. We cannot just legislate and assume that this law will be played out in the real world, because people live their lives not in the law books, but how they live their lives. So the informal sector in Uganda is quite big. And indeed, we don't even understand it, how it runs, right?
We don't understand
We don't understand it, yes. If you really ask the policy players, how does this informal sector work? They don't really understand it. So to go in and understand how this informal sector plays out, what challenges they actually meet as they go through their businesses, and therefore try to remove those particular rigidities, slowly bringing them into the formal sector. So they could also contribute, by the way. Because right now, if you look at the informal sector, many people are worried of, I mean, let's talk about Kampala here where we live. People who are running the small businesses, they're running away from the KCCA, which is coming to collect some dues from them.
Right,
probably they're not trapped in the revenue collection of URA. Probably they're not being caught there. But the thing is, they are struggling to survive. And you're not removing any impediments in their way. So it's important, if you want them to play in the economy and become part of this formal economy and make everyone involved, remove the rigidities, make life easier for them, make them actually start to run. Then you can say, okay, now we have enabled you. The infrastructure is part of enabling, but many other things are also part of enabling, even the skilling of it. You know, Ugandans, we have this education which has taught us a lot to be smart and clean and sit in offices. But when you really test the skills that we have to survive and do our work, we are really lacking.
Yes, and that's why we bring in, as the poor become poorer, the rich are becoming richer.
Absolutely.
And that's when we bring in the gap, this huge income gap that within this finding they talk about how most of the people that they went to were asking how the Ugandans are concerned about this gap. You go to some areas within Kampala and you see the neighbor next to this amazing mansion. The person next to them barely has a structure that could survive in a rainy season. What should be done? Is it the government that's not doing the right thing? Is it the people that are not? What exactly is happening there?
It's a priorities game, I think. It's a priorities game. You know, you cannot exclude government and you cannot completely say Ugandans are being irrational. The reason you construct a perimeter all around your house and you put a razor wire around is because you're worried that what you have sweated to bring forth might actually be taken away by those who have not done as much as you have done. But indeed, they have also become victims. They've been also victims of circumstances. So the inequality gap is big. It is big, and as you say, those who are poorer are really going down, and those who are rich, wealthy, are becoming wealthier and wealthier. This is a challenge that government has to take on. The thing is, you know, we run something we call market economics, right? Market economics means play out and things will sort out themselves. But there are very many assumptions behind that. You assume everybody knows what happens in the market. You assume there are very many players. You assume there are no things that actually make life harder, like corruption. If corruption comes in, it blocks certain things that don't allow you to know what I know. Right. So that blocks my way. So then the market is not perfect anymore. So markets fail. When they fail, government should be able to say this is failing, so we cannot rely on it. So these are challenges that must be taken on. You know.
Doctor, what about that gap?
Yeah, again, as he has said, you know, we have an imperfect economy. Again, when we say that probably 80% of the labor force is in the informal sector, you will see that we really have a fragile economy. So with such an imperfect economy, it's not surprising that you end up with this very, very imperfect situation. So if you look at what the way this economy rewards people, you will see that it is highly skewed. So the people who should be at the apex of this society are not. For example, people who, the hardworking, the people who are really, engaged in production, you will find that they are not actually the ones who are earning big, but the middlemen, the idlers, these who cheat and so on. So you find that there's quite a lot that is not going according to what you may call the economic, equation. So there are a number of loopholes and corners which need to be straightened out in our economy to make it, predictable, and that's why it is very difficult right now to invest. To attract serious foreign investors.
And as we straighten it up, corruption.
Exactly.
What belongs to whoever it should be going to never gets to them. Whatever is placed by the government to perhaps reach someone is never given to them. Then the ones who are gotten, they're never reprimanded to the point that they should be. Yes?
To make it unattractive to be corrupt.
So this corruption issue, because we must say it has contributed to the poor becoming poorer. Yes.
Yeah, it is. And You know, corruption is a very ugly, animal. That once the best way to deal with corruption, don't allow it in, because
well, it's here already.
It looks like a general statement. Don't allow it in. How? How can you stop?
Because we used not to be like this.
Right.
Ugandan society is not to be very as corrupt as this. But with the moment corruption sets into a country, it's very difficult to eliminate it. And there are a number of we have so many institutions that have been set up to fight corruption. But now, if you hear some of the court cases, they involve the people in those institutions themselves.
So, what could be the solution of fighting corruption, Mr. Julius?
So, as I said earlier, Uganda, we seem to be good at establishing policies, establishing institutions, putting them in place and appearing to be doing something. But the real lived lives of Ugandans are different from what is documented. So I want to challenge my fellow Ugandans that we have a role, myself, yourself, we have a role in fighting corruption. Can we stop praising people whom we think are unfairly or using corrupt means to get better than us? Can we stop that? If we do that, then we stop incentivizing them doing what they do. It's not cool for you to work 3 months and then you buy Mercedes-Benz. When I've been struggling for the last 20 years, there is no way I can even afford the cheapest car around.
Right.
I cannot praise you. I'll actually say, I don't think your means are straight. I don't want to associate with you. That will isolate you. You will check yourself. So we have something we can do as Ugandans, and also challenge the government to actually live the way they prophesy to say, zero tolerance to corruption, have IGG, have this and this. Okay, let's see them bite indeed.
All right. Let's see them back.
Let's see. Let's
We
see.
need to also be whistleblowers as well.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. Interesting conversation. What are your views? The hashtag is morning at NTV across all the social media platforms. Thank you so much, Dr. John Sekamate, a planning and development consultant right here in the country, and also Mr. Julius Atuhura. He is the regional coordinator research at Toweza East Africa. Thank you so much for making time and coming on the show. Right. Right about now, we have come to the close of Kickstarter. However, we have Stephen Mbide in our roads just to tell us how traffic looks like, and after that Uncle D, yes, David Rukasi, will be coming in with your responses on social media. Don't go too far. Good morning, Stephen.
Oh, it's a bright and sunny morning here at Ntinda, where I'm coming to you from, and this is the traffic and travel update from this area. This is Nakawa division, and as you can see from the live pictures, the vehicles coming from this other side of Ntinda driving towards Bukoto and then towards the city center are already in a terrific bumper-to-bumper traffic jam, and this traffic jam begins from as far as Shell Ntinda is driving towards this point at the Dandi Sari Road, where I'm standing right now. But if you know you're heading towards Naguru or Kololo areas, you can branch off from this side. This is Ntinda 2 Road, where the camera is now facing. This is a short and quick route for you who is heading towards Naguru, Kololo and areas beyond that side. But as you can see, very many people have been staged at this Ntinda 2 junction here, waiting for public means like taxis and buses to drive them towards the city. And they've been standing here for close to 15 minutes waiting for this means of transport, just because the taxis and other vehicles have been stuck in traffic jam coming from Ntinda direction. And now at least some of the vehicles have come to their rescue. If you know you're heading towards Bukoto, at least less congestion at that side, towards that side of Bukoto, and you again be finding the delay just at the traffic lights of Bukoto. That is next to the Chisasi Road for you who is heading towards Kamochia or Lugogo Bypass. And now if you know you're heading towards the Kamochia or areas beyond, you can now use the old Chira Road. That is the one that is popularly known as the ghetto side, connecting towards the Kobil of Kamocha side. And if you know you're heading towards the Lugogo bypass, then just know that again there will be another 5 minutes of delay time for you as you drive towards the traffic lights of Chira Road Police Station. There you'll be losing more time there. But coming from Bukoto side, joining Ntinda and then connecting to the other side of Chira, Chiwatule, Najera areas, there is less congestion that side. As you can see, less congestion driving towards Ntinda side. But for those heading towards the Stretcher Junction or connecting to Jinja Road, still you also be finding it a little bit inconveniencing as you drive past Shell along the Stretcher Road, because before you turn towards the Naguru side or as you drive towards the police quarters, proceeding towards the junction of Spear at Nakawa, that's where the traffic jam builds from, connecting towards that side of Jinja Road. But other than that, I can just remind you that if you're setting off from your house or wherever you've parked, remember to move around your car, because especially for you who is having some little kids below 5 years, you need to move around your car. You never know, one of the kids could have gone behind the car or in front of it, and then you just start the car. You may end up knocking that child, and like in case of that accident, you may not like it. Or otherwise, you can also check for the functionality of your car parts. For example, the traffic lights, are they working so well? Have you checked the wipers? Are they in good condition? Because you may never know. Along the way, maybe anything can happen. I may need to use those wipers or those indicators and those lights. So these are some of the things that you have to look out for as you're setting off from your home or from wherever you've been parking. I now hand over to David to take you with the rest of the programming on Morning at NTV. This is Stephen Mbide coming to you live from Tinda alongside Joshua Mbazira, who has been giving you those motion pictures. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen Bide, giving us a quick look on the roads leading to Kampala. And if you're coming from the Ntinda areas, hopefully that is a good guide for you as you head into town for work, or even those that are heading home to rest. Now, yes, a new report from a recent study conducted by Twaweza Uganda has shown that poverty levels among Ugandans have more than doubled from 14% in 2017 to 29% in 2018. And we ask, do you think that we Ugandans are lazy? On our social media platforms, that is Facebook and Twitter, the hashtag is Morning at NTV. We take a look at some of your feedback. And Mara to talk, you say government programs are poorly implemented with a lot of wastage in between. How can poverty alleviation projects achieve their goals? Sometimes you find the real people who benefit in terms of kickbacks, and the heavy ones at that are the so-called government technocrats. Okay. Omohereza Nahereza, you say that's what he has to say, but they are not considering the quality of jobs the youth are doing to earn a living. The youths are not motivated by government's economic. Okay, Mara Atuk read that. Sanda Keys, you say the government itself should make sure that the factories which are keeping people for millions of hours are paying them well. Ugandans are poor because foreigners are... And you stop it right there. So the question on our social media platforms is, do you think that the poverty levels that are on the rise is because Ugandans are lazy? Well, a couple of people seem to suggest that we don't have enough jobs, or we are not being paid well. What is your thought? Please share with us. The hashtag is Morning at NTV. You can do that on Twitter and on Facebook, and we will get into more of your feedback when we get back. And of course, Mala and Rita are still here. And we'll get into more of this discussion as the show goes on. Morning at NTV continues.
Drink it and win it with Coke Studio. Buy and enjoy your favorite 500 ml Coca-Cola with the yellow crown. And check under the crown for the name of your favorite Ugandan Coke Studio artists. Each of your favorite artists wins you fantastic prizes like a fully paid trip to a Coke Studio concert, TVs, decoders, airtime, t-shirts, and Coca-Cola products. So keep searching to keep winning.
Watching comedy.